This is my first live stream, so I'm excited.
All right. It says we are streaming live now.
Okay. All right. Well, we can go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited for this presentation. I am Ashley Stewart. I'm the director of the Caseyville Public Library, and I'm thrilled to have Will with us. Will is the curator at the St. Clair County Historical Society. So he is going to talk about, moments in time, right? Holidays in our past. So I'm thrilled. And he was able to get a whole bunch of stuff that he researched as well. So I can't wait to hear about it. So Will, I'm going to pass it over to you.
All right, great. All right, well, welcome everybody. Thanks to the Caseyville Library for inviting me, and thanks to everybody for joining us. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here with my presentation. And so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to take a trip back to 3 moments in our local past, 3 Decembers in our history. And we'll see a little bit of what's going on in the news, how people were celebrating, and hopefully gain a little bit of insight into the past through these slices of local life. So the first moment we're going to look at is 100 years ago, December of 1920. Now, in the news in December of 1920, President Woodrow Wilson won the Nobel Peace Prize for helping to establish the League of Nations. You can see him on the left there. In the center, the Akron Pros won a coin toss after a scoreless tie game against the Decatur Staleys to become what would be considered the first champions of pro football. And lastly, on the right there, the Government of Ireland Act was signed, which led to the partition of Ireland into the Irish Free State, which would later become the Republic of Ireland, and Northern Ireland. So you get a little sense of what was going on around the world. But locally, people were starting to prepare for Christmas. As you can see there on the left, the first loads of Christmas trees were coming in from Vermont via railroad to Mercurio Brothers Nursery in Belleville. And on the right there, you can see there were big festivities being planned for Christmas. All the retail stores were going to close down on Christmas Eve, and they were going to have a big celebration in the middle of the public square in Belleville. And remember, in the 1920s, the fountain wouldn't have been there. The fountain wasn't there until 1937. So they were going to plan to have music and caroling and a big public celebration starting at 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve right in downtown Belleville. Now, then as now, people wanted the latest, greatest, most fun technological gadgets for Christmas. But back then, the gadgets were different. And in my research, I ran across so many ads for trying to get people to buy record players, to buy Victrolas. And you can see on the left there an ad for Kamek Piano Company in Belleville. And these Victrolas, you may have seen one, they look like furniture. And they kind of wanted them to be the focal point of the room. And they wanted them to kind of fit in with people's decor, but also be this new, neat, modern thing. And you can see that you can get the top of the line model for $135. Now, remember, the prices look low to us, but the average American worker took home $62.87 a week in 1920. So that's something to keep in mind. And you can also see on the right there, the Rhine Piano Company, they offered a layaway plan, and you could pay all year for the Victrola that you were going to use later on. So looking at some local department store ads, we today didn't invent the idea to shop local, to buy local. 100 years ago, that's just what people did. And you can see ads from several Belleville department stores, Romeisers and Sanger's, Feast Fisher and Fellner Rathheim. And you can see stores with a wide range of gifts, everything from shoes to mufflers to vests to, of course, bringing the kids into it. You see Toyland Ahoy there at Sanger Mercantile. And here again, as you can see, the prices are pretty low. But for example, if you look at that Sanger's ad, those women's suits would cost half a week's pay to someone back in 1920. But you can see the wide variety of stuff that people would have shopped for. And all of these stores were right up and down East and West Main Street in Belleville. Now, I thought some of these ads were kind of neat. The ad for Lunig Shoe Company, the Comfies shoes that were ranged between $2 and $2.50. Those look like shoes you still might buy today. The Juliets, however, with the fur and ribbon trim, although, for the right person, that might be the right shoe. And the ads that you see, jewelry, always a popular gift. And we'll see more about jewelry a little bit later, some funny ads for that. And also the ads that we see nowadays with, somebody with the big bow on top of the car. I guess that wasn't a new thing, because we see an ad here from 1920 for Modern Automobile Garage, 500 East Main Street, where Community Kindness Thrift Store is now. That was originally a Ford dealership. Although I think the commercials we see today go a little bit beyond saying a Ford car will be an acceptable Christmas gift. You'd hope that the person giving it receiving it would think it was a little bit more than acceptable. And what would the holidays be without food? And you can see lots of good stuff here from a local legend, Feikert's Bakery. You can see everything from Christmas Stollen to potato chips they made. And I really, if I had to pick one, the flaky butter pretzels that they made, those sound pretty good. So of course, food was always a part of the festivity. The newspapers also published these, and this is kind of a timeless thing, and a lot of these are pretty sweet, these kids' letters to Santa Claus. A couple of the funnier ones, if you look on the right-hand side there, you can see little Alice Libby asking for a dolly as big as her brother on Christmas morning, and specifying that she wants that on Christmas morning, and on Christmas night she wants her candy and oranges. And you can also see that, the kids being kind of nice, saying, don't forget mom and dad, and don't forget my brothers and sisters. Although I wonder when little William Graves over there on the right-hand side says, Merry Christmas and a good night to you. I hope he wasn't being too brusque there with Santa, but they published the kids' letters to Santa Claus in the newspaper, and a lot of those are very, very charming. So we're going to move on to another moment in time. This is 75 years ago. We're getting closer and closer to our own time. December of 1945. And I was talking to Ashley before the program, and frankly, looking at my research, I could have done the whole program just on Christmas of 1945. If you think about it, this was the first Christmas after the end of World War II. The war had only been over for a couple of months. And you'll see this as a big theme in a lot of the things I found that relate to Christmas happening that year. In other news going on at the time, just a couple of items, not directly war related, one of them is, but it was in December of 1945 that the classic movie Bells of St. Mary's with Bing Crosby and Ingrid Bergman premiered. In the center there, also having to do with media, you see a picture of what's considered one of the first color TV broadcasts being tested at RCA in December of 1945. And this is still pretty early for television, although they were becoming commercially available. Those wouldn't start really showing up under Christmas trees until a couple of years later. And lastly, on the right there, in kind of a freak accident, General George Patton dies in December of 1945. Surely a figure that everyone at the time would have known, and he passes away just a few days before Christmas. I believe it was on the 21st. So as I mentioned earlier, you can see the effects of the war were still very, very present at Christmas time 1945. In the upper left-hand corner, you can see this is from the editorial section, imploring people to go easy on sugar in their baked goods because there were still shortages of sugar and shortages of ways to get it out to consumers. And you can also see in the lower left-hand corner that people were having trouble, merchants were having trouble keeping their shelves stocked. Because the infrastructure, the logistics, and manufacturing, they were still converting that over from a war footing to peacetime production. So it would have behooved you in 1945 to get your Christmas shopping done early, although after that many years of the war going on, people were probably used to that. Here again, we see jewelry and from Sil Feetsum Jewelers in Belleville, you can see, and they mention in remembrance of the first peacetime Christmas in 5 years. And think of what a relief that would have been to people. And I love this picture on the right here of recently returned veterans kind of being conscripted, so to speak, by the local post office to use decommissioned Army trucks to go out and deliver the mail at Christmas. So the guys get back and they're right back to helping out. You can see further lingering effects of the war. There were still war bond drives going on in December of 1940. You can see on the left there, lots of participating local businesses in the Victory Loan program, and they were kind of having a contest centered around the Lincoln Theater, offering free admission to people who bought Liberty bonds, who bought Victory Loan bonds. With having a movie premiere and having free tickets, that was further inducement to buy war bonds. In the center, we see this was kind of an interesting article that travel restrictions were listed on German, Italian, and Japanese foreign nationals who were living in the United States for the first time since 1942. They weren't required to get permission to move around the country. So you can see kind of some of those wartime restrictions were loosening up a little bit in December of 1945. And I also love this ad on the right here, because this is kind of a hint at things to come. What could be a bigger, we saw them wanting you to buy cars for Christmas presents in 1920. Now we see wanting to buy a house. But think about the bigger historical things going on at the time. There was a housing shortage after the war. And also it was in 1945 when a little thing called the baby boom starts, when the joke I always tell is it seems like my grandparents' generation couldn't stop having children, including my parents. And one of the things that you needed was a house for everyone to live in. So you see an ad for new houses, and the guys coming back had GI loan money. And the gift of a house, that would have been quite a big one. You can see that's when a lot of new subdivisions start to pop up. Including, and I posted this ad on our Facebook page earlier today, and someone pointed something out that I thought was interesting. The lots are pretty big for the time, 100 feet by 200 feet with the house on it. So, and you wonder, how many people bought these houses at Christmas time, 1945, and for how many people of my parents' age was this Christmas present house the house they grew up in. So those are some of the interesting historical what ifs you can think about. Now, I put this page together. It's sort of choices of gifts for women. A good gift might have been the one on the left, a wallet from Fellner Rathheim in Belleville, nice leather wallet. Now, a better gift, we're going from good to better, might have been jewelry from Worley Jewelers in Belleville. And a questionable gift, or maybe no way, was this ad targeted at men telling you the gift that mom and your wife really wants is an electric water heater. Now, this would have been handy, but maybe not perhaps the most romantic or heartfelt Christmas present. I remember my mom once yelling at my dad to never come home with a Christmas present that plugs into the wall. So this is, I thought that was interesting, trying to get dad to buy mom a hot water heater for Christmas. And a couple of other, we see different roles, of course, for women and men here, and a couple of things that change. We see the ad on the left saying that all of her Christmas shopping is done. And of course, women, for most of modern history, have been primarily consumers. So ads should be aimed at them. Any of you who watched Mad Men out there probably learned a lot about that in a similar time period. And Smalls was another one of the big department stores, big clothing stores in downtown Belleville. And on the right there, you see that you want a perfect Christmas for him for moments of relaxation. And this is clothing and ties and slippers and everything from Borman's in Belleville. And in the center, this is a really interesting one. If you read this ad for Reliable Loan Company, talking about getting loans for Christmas. Now you have to remember 1945 is before credit cards really took off. You don't really see credit cards starting to take off until the 1960s. And what you see here is this was one of the ways that people got extra money. And also, if you read some of our loan department for women, loans made to married or single women confidential service, because most banks would not lend to a woman, a married woman, without her husband's signature in the 1940s. And in some places, I mean, that goes on until the 1970s, really. In one way or another. So this was kind of a dual thing that Santa's whispering in your ear here to go downtown and get a loan should you need it. Now we see this is something that's very familiar to us. We want convenience and staying in contact with people at Christmas. And on the left, we see this was it's not quite Grubhub or Uber, but it's similar, where you could do all your shopping at all these stores in downtown Belleville, leave your packages there, and then have a delivery service go and pick them all up and deliver them to your house. So if we have any entrepreneurs out there looking for everything old is new again kind of business idea, there you go. And also on the right is an ad for Southwestern Bell, because remember, 1945, long distance phone calls would have been possible to keep in touch across the miles. But anyone out there who made a long distance call anytime in the 1980s or before knew how difficult making a long distance call could be, and also how expensive it was. But this is Southwestern Bell wanting to let you know that they have all their circuits working at capacity to make sure that anyone who wants to make a call can do so. Now we move on to kind of our last moment in time. This is 50 years ago, December 1970. And so a couple of things going on in the news at the time. That's when Elvis makes his famous visit to the White House to meet Richard Nixon, which in historical archives side facts for you, this is one of the most requested photographs from any presidential library that exists, is the picture of Richard Nixon and Elvis. And also in December of 1970, the movie Love Story premieres. I'm sure you've heard the phrase "love means never having to say you're sorry," and you can see Ali MacGraw and Ryan O'Neal there. And on the right-hand side, it was the last time the band The Doors performed together live, and bringing together their short but important career. And also, it was the month when the Environmental Protection Agency was established by the Nixon administration. So you see a little bit of what was going on. Now, locally, the biggest story of 1970 at the holidays was a start of a new tradition that this year is 50 years old. It was the first year they did the Way of Lights at the Shrine in Belleville. And people could make their way to Belleville and see 77,000 miniature lights over a half of a mile driving course through the rolling land. And I'm sure I don't have to describe it too much, because I'm sure lots of the folks out there have been through more than one times, or it's a yearly tradition, of course. But that first year was not without its problems, because just a few days after it opened, somebody took it upon themselves to kidnap the baby Jesus statue and the manger from the shrine and leave a ransom note for $50,000. Well, we have no record that the ransom was ever paid, and it was returned without incident. But this goes to show you that, people playing pranks, of course, is nothing new. And that it was returned without incident. So everything ended up working out in the end. But I'm sure there were some tense days there, wondering who had done this and where it had gone. Looking at a couple of ads from the time, we can see here again prices going up as time goes on. In the center, we see an ad for Radio Shack, and there were several of those here. There was one in East St. Louis. There was one in Belleville. And you can see your tech gadgets of the 1970s that you might have wanted to get your hands on. And some of you are probably looking at a lot of this stuff thinking, wow, this stuff's collector's items there, especially, and anyone younger watching this is stuff you definitely won't recognize. Things like an 8-track player, which you see in the grid there in Santarama at Radio Shack for $129. And the recliner that you could get at Biederman's in Belleville or Collinsville or Alton or several other locations. It's hard to tell from the picture, but I'm pretty sure that's Naugahyde. And anyone who lived through that period is probably familiar with that. And also, I thought it was interesting that you could get your Christmas albums from Firestone. You don't often think of that, but lots of freebies and giveaways that were available at the time. So those are our 3 moments in time. And to end on, and of course, if we wanted afterwards, to have discussion or Ashley, if you wanted to talk a little bit, we can certainly do that. But I wanted to leave everybody with an absolutely wonderful editorial I ran across. And this appeared in the Belleville News-Democrat, December 13th, 1945. And it's entitled "The Blight of Prejudice." And I quote, "This is the time of year when extra emphasis is given to peace on earth, goodwill to men. We know that we cannot have peace without goodwill, and that goodwill cannot exist along with prejudice. So the Yuletide is a timely season in which to take stock of our prejudices and endeavor to correct them. Practically every one of us has prejudices. Some of us may shudder at the idea of eating frogs or eels or snails or some other foods we've never tasted before. Or some may be prejudiced against bow ties or purple shirts or women in slacks and fur coats. But these are meaningless prejudices which don't hurt us or anyone else. There are other prejudices, however, which do affect our lives very much. A prejudice against a necktie because of its hue is harmless, but prejudice against a person because of his color or race or nationality or religion can do plenty of damage. A prejudice is an opinion or emotional feeling which is not based on fact or reason. Prejudice was used by the Germans and the Japanese in the recent war to split nations wide open with hate and confusion. All of us inherit certain characteristics, but we do not inherit our prejudices. Whom we learn to like or dislike, love or hate, depends on our experiences. And as children, we imitate not only the activities of those around us, especially our parents, but also the feelings, attitudes, and opinions. Prejudices, too, are absorbed unconsciously from our parents and other people in our environment. We wrongly get set with the idea that because one member of a group acted in a certain way to us, all members of that racial, religious, or national group must act the same way. Prejudice is contagious. History has taught us that when we discriminate against one segment of the people, we set a pattern that may be used against other groups. The story of America is proof that there are no superior or inferior people. Our country has been made great by the people who came from lands all under the sun. People with names like Washington, Lincoln, Roosevelt, Carnegie, Sikorsky, Toscanini, Einstein, and countless more. But it's not only the big names, the Hall of Fame names, that have made America any more than it was only the big names that have won our wars. We know the biggest part of all wars are fought and won by the little names. The men who built and are building America, who clear the forests, span the rivers, dig the coal, plow the fields, work the machines, the men who made America strong and free, and who fought and died to preserve that freedom on battlefields all over the world, were and are men of every race, color, nationality, and creed. Turn back the pages and read the casualty list of any day during the past war. You'll find names like Agnes Stello, Cohen, Curran, Grunenwald, Hrubeck, Ivanovsky, Kuzian, Marshall, Thomas, Warblansky, and Smith. Were any of these inferior? Not so you could notice it. So let's away with prejudice. Let's go on from this Christmas with goodwill towards all who are doing a good job, large or small. When we have replaced prejudice with tolerance, then and not until then will we have truly attained peace on earth. And to leave you with that, this is just a little more about the Historical Society, how you can contact us and keep in touch with us. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and go back to the video. So, Ashley, did you have any questions for me, or?
I don't have any questions. Well, that was absolutely amazing. You couldn't see me. I didn't want to like interrupt you, but I was laughing and giggling. Some of those ads, it's amazing what you can learn from our history by how the ads are worded and who they're targeted and how they're targeted. And
yeah,
so
Dad, go buy Mom a water heater.
Right.
Because I pictured my own father thinking about that for a second until he realized, boy, if I come home with a water heater, that's right. not gonna work out. And yeah, the fact that the one about, you can get a loan and your husband doesn't have to sign for it. That was, but like I said before, I could have done the whole thing about 1945, just the feeling that people had. I guess it's one of those things, just how relieved they were, how happy everybody was. And that editorial from the paper kind of underlines it and reminds everybody, this is one of the things we were fighting about in the war that just ended. So this is a good time of year to think about peace on earth and goodwill towards all. And I thought that those words written by the editorial board of the News Democrat were as good then as they are now. But no, this was, oh yeah. And there were, and geez, I could have done another whole one on the New Year's Eve stuff I ended up finding. You're welcome to, Will,
because that was wonderful.
Oh, okay.
Anytime. You just let us know. But yeah.
But no, it was a lot of fun to put together. And as you can see, as when I taught, I always told my students that people change, but not that much. And we can see you look at what's different and what's the same. That's history, change and continuity. And you can see that if you take this little slice of life at 3 different times in the past, you get a little sense of what people were like and how they're a lot like us. I mean, it's not too much different. And how you can take one thing, like the ad trying to sell people houses in 1945. And there's so much kind of wrapped up in that. There's a lot wrapped up in that. So yeah, like I said, this was a lot of fun to put together. I'm glad you had me do this, because this was a lot of fun, and I really hope everybody enjoyed it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Will.
Oh, sure.
I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. And then if you do watch and you have questions, feel free to reach out you can comment, you can email myself or Will, and make sure to follow and subscribe to both of our platforms, if it's on Facebook, if it's on YouTube, or however we reach out to the community, because that's the best way. Anytime we do new videos, you'll get notified. So that way you'll know to hop on. So I think that's it that I have, Will.
That's all for me, apart from to thank everybody
It was
again,
fantastic.
and
Thank you so
wish
much.
wish everybody the absolute happiest of holidays and better days ahead.
Yes. Happy holidays. Thank you so much.